Hello, I'm Clive Johnson, coming today from Leigh-on-Sea in the UK. Welcome to Impact, a podcast about how we can each bring about real change in the world and getting practical in making that happen. A special welcome if you're listening for the first time, and a big thank you to our new subscribers. Each week we look at one aspect of how we can connect our hearts to offer healing for others with our collective intention, prayers and meditation, and go behind the headlines of a critical happening in our world that needs our attention right now. No Ellen this week. She is far away. In fact, I think she may well be almost right around the opposite side of the world to me right now. Certainly in the southern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. I'm actually just about in the eastern hemisphere, although I never really think of crossing an important. Is it important? I guess if you're a navigator it is, or you're concerned about time, but I'm just a little to the east of Greenwich, matter of miles, which is the prime meridian. Anyway, enough about that. In today's episode, we take one of our regular deep dives to more fully understand and tune in with something many of us may know only a little about, and see where we might hone in with our prayers and intentions. And as we recalled, it's 16th of May, 2025, and this is certainly a topic I really knew very little about. It's not really been making the news here in the UK. Today, turning our attention to the Balkan country of Serbia, which has had quite a long, troubled history and is currently experiencing a period of significant political turbulence, marked by ongoing mass protests, allegations of democratic backsliding, and a government grappling with both domestic and international pressures. The country is facing a very uncertain future, with analysts saying that the prospects of democratic stability and protection of human rights now hangs in the balance. It's a story that's been quite familiar in a number of Eastern European countries. So what is the political situation in Serbia at the moment? Serbia is a constitutional republic of around 7 million people. It has a president and also a prime minister who heads the government and has elections every 4 years. Currently, it is headed by President Aleksandar Vučić of the Serbian Progressive Party, or the SNS. He's been in office since 2017 and was re-elected in 2022. Milos Vučević of the SNS became Prime Minister in May last year. The SNS dominates the political scene, having been in power for over 15 years now, often in coalition with the Socialist Party of Serbia and smaller parties, and it maintains significant control over state institutions and media, which has raised concerns about the erosion of democratic norms, as we'll see. Snap elections at the end of 2023 saw the SNS win around 47% of the vote. The main opposition coalition at that time, Serbia Against Violence, or the SPN, trailed at 23%. The elections were marred by accusations of irregularities, including vote buying and ballot box stuffing, and that was reported by various international observers. Since late last year, Serbia has faced sustained protests, particularly after a deadly incident at the Novi Sad railway station, major railway station, that occurred on 1st November last year, when the concrete canopy of the station's entrance collapsed onto a busy pavement below, killing 16 people. A wave of public outrage and mass protests across the country followed, in which citizens have accused the government of negligence, corruption, and a lack of transparency in public works. This incident also led to the resignation of key government ministers and prompted student-led demonstrations who continue to demand accountability and reforms, while the government has responded with both repression and attempts to co-opt public sentiment, such as launching what it calls Movement for the People and the State. Under Vučić's leadership, the SNS has sought to consolidate power further by forming new political movements and reshuffling the cabinet. And with this political crisis unresolved, and opposition groups pushing for greater accountability, several prominent international organizations have raised concerns about the state of democracy and human rights in the country. The Economic Intelligence Unit rated the country as being a flawed democracy back in 2023, while international organizations like Freedom House note a decline in democratic standards, citing government influence over the media and judiciary, harassment of opposition figures, and restrictions on freedom of expression. These observations have been going on for at least 2 or 3 years now, looking at the reports from Freedom House. Over 70 attacks on protesters have been recorded since the Novi Sad railway station collapse, including incidents where vehicles drove into crowds and the use of brute force by the police. Dozens of activists have been detained for months without credible evidence, facing politically motivated charges such as preparing an attack on the constitutional order. Detentions have often been extended, and some activists have been placed on wanted lists for participating in peaceful demonstrations. Discrimination remains widespread, affecting Roma, LGBTI people, refugees, and migrants. LGBTI people in particular face intolerance, threats, and violence, with dozens of hate-motivated incidents and physical attacks recorded each year. Refugees and migrants are also vulnerable to abuse and border violence. Demonstrators have been subject to excessive force, arbitrary arrest, and disproportionate criminal charges, according to these international observers. And civil organizations now face mounting pressure, including smear campaigns, office raids, and investigations on trumped-up charges. It's sadly an all too familiar course that has happened in a number of countries in that region. Journalists and human rights defenders are also frequently targeted with threats, harassment, and lawsuits intended to silence critical reporting. There were over 150 such threats and attacks against journalists reported in a single year. The government has repeatedly threatened to introduce a foreign agents law. That's something we've seen threatened in countries like Romania, which would further stifle dissent and restrict the activities of independent organizations. President Vučić and his party remain firmly entrenched, and there's speculation among many that he may seek to retain power by shifting roles after his current presidential term ends. At the same time, the opposition remains fragmented and relatively weak, limiting its ability to check the government. The country also faces challenges in its geopolitics. It refuses to recognize its neighbor Kosovo as an independent state, considering Kosovo to be a breakaway province and continuing to assert sovereignty over it. There's quite a complex history in that area. Tensions in northern Kosovo are particularly high, where a significant ethnic Serb population lives. Armed incidents, protests, and blockades have occurred there, and Serbia has threatened to deploy troops, a threat that's widely seen as being provocative and is rejected by many international actors. Serbia's strategic goal remains EU membership. However, progress has stalled due to issues such as the normalization of relationships with Kosovo, and also due to the fact that Serbia is currently misaligned in its foreign policy with that of the EU, particularly regarding Russia. Serbia seeks to maintain strong ties with Russia and also with China, and this has led to tensions with EU and other Western partners over issues like sanctions being imposed on Russia because of the war with Ukraine. So this puts Serbia in a situation where attempting a political balancing act is increasingly precarious, coming to the point where perhaps it will need to make a choice. And it's looking perhaps, according to some of the sources that I've looked into, that it may well be deciding on the Russian side. Most commentators believe that Serbia is now at a critical turning point. While entrenched elites and international inaction threaten democracy, the unprecedented protest movement and emergence of a politically engaged new generation do offer hope that there will be democratic renewal, perhaps in the midterm. However, the immediate future is likely to remain unstable, with the outcome hinging on whether this popular mobilization can translate into meaningful political change, and whether the government responds with reform or further repression. It really is crunch time when there is this possibility of political violence and state repression, or perhaps a more promising way forward. So let's turn now to consider where we might hone in with our intentions and prayers. So if you want to come back to this point to join us in holding intention and prayers, we'll put a note of where to find this part in the show notes. Take a moment just to allow yourself to arrive, to center, really feel into the core of your being, letting go as best possible of all external distraction and feeling into your physical ground, the connection with the floor or whatever is supporting you, the earth below, and really feeling connected deep within as we each have our own way of holding intention or offering prayer. These are some of the areas for focus, areas for intention that have come to us. We will for a way forward in Serbia that allows for peaceful protest and for those in power to understand and respond sensitively to the causes of public dissatisfaction. We ask for a readiness among those in power in Serbia to tolerate media scrutiny and allow freedom of the press. We pray that Serbia's leadership will be persuaded that a strategy of concentrating power, threatening opposition leaders, and government control over the judiciary will not serve either their own or their country's highest interests in the longer term. We will for wisdom among those leading the protest movement to know how and where to direct their protests in the interests of achieving dialogue and a peaceable way forward for their country. We ask for wisdom among diplomats and strategists in determining and maintaining Serbia's international relations in a way that serves the highest good of the country's citizens and the region as a whole. We ask for a readiness among those with influence to guard against potential international or other bad actor influence in social media or other forms of external political influence. And this week, as Serbia's political situation remains finely balanced, with the government consolidating power amid mounting domestic and international challenges and the mass unrest at home, we suggest holding as our main intention. We will that Serbia's President, Prime Minister and Cabinet will be guided by wise and compassionate counsel that seeks to guard against democratic backsliding. Please join us in holding this. That about wrapped it up for this episode. Looking forward, hopefully, for Ellen being back with us next week. Remember, you can connect with us in the Facebook group and for live intention holding in my daily Insight Timer offerings, and with Ellen in the Labyrinth Activist Network's Zoom calls. Details of how to hook up with these are in our show notes. Look out too for our next special topic episode, which we'll be releasing in the next few days. Thank you for listening and for sharing with us in holding intentions. We look forward to connecting again next time. In the meantime, thank you, go well, stay safe, and as Ellen always says, remember, we are more powerful together. Impact is presented by Ellen Vince and Clive Johnson and produced by Impact Productions. Our theme music is by Chris Collins and our logo artwork is by Auto Classic. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible or your favorite podcast provider. We're a non-commercial podcast dedicated to people of any faith tradition or none who yearn for healing in our troubled world. Please pass on the word so others may join us in making an impact. Thank you for listening.